everyone, and welcome to another episode of Selling Greenville, your favorite real estate podcast. You're in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm your host, as always, Stan McCune, realtor right here in Greenville, South Carolina, and you can find all of my wonderful contact information in the show notes. If you need a realtor, right, that's how I make money from being a realtor. So please, if you like this content, that's the best way to support it, is by using me as your realtors. I'd appreciate if you guys could do that. And the other way to support it is by liking. Just hit that little like button. If you're on YouTube, come on, guys. It's literally one click, all right? And make sure you subscribe, hit the little, there's like a little bell thing. I don't know. The kids tell me to I need to point to it. I don't know. Here, it's somewhere down here, all right? If you're watching on YouTube. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, a rating and a review would also be stellar, right? In addition to subscribing. So please do that. I really appreciate that. And I hope to get a lot more people watching and listening in the next year. We're right at the end of the year. I mean, I guess we still have a few more weeks to go. For me, it feels like we're right at the end of the year. I mean, everything is starting to get wrapped up real estate wise. Kind of the year ends in real estate before Christmas, right? For the most part. I mean, there's still stuff that's going to have to happen. Still balls that need to be pushed forward, over the holiday season. But this year, just kind of the way things are looking, I think we're going to get a couple of slow weeks during the Christmas season, which I'm not going to complain about, right? It's been, I've told you guys a few times, it's been some of the busiest weeks of the year for me the past few weeks. And that's not a complaint. I'm very happy about that. And if you're a listener who has been keeping me busy looking at houses or whatever, thank you. Really appreciate that from every one of you. I never say that I'm too busy, right? If I'm too busy, that's my own fault, right? That's nobody else's fault except for me. But here we are with one of my favorite episodes of the year, the craziest stories of 2025. Sometimes I do episodes that are pretty scripted. I haven't done that as much this year. Previous years, I did a lot more just fully scripted episodes. I haven't done that a whole lot this year. This episode's not scripted at all. Now I have my points. I've wrote down over the course of the year the stories that I wanted to hit. But I'm just going to kind of do these off the top of my head and see how it turns out. And of course, these are real estate stories, right? So if you're, depending on how close you are to real estate, this is going to be crazier than if you're from a distance and don't really know a whole lot about real estate. Some of these might not sound crazy at all. But for real estate, these are all pretty crazy stories. So I hope you guys enjoy, and we'll just get right into it. And make sure you listen all the way to the end. I'm going to try not to let these stories go on too long, but people love stories. So at the same time, I'm not going to skimp on the details. So crazy stories of 2025. And these are not in a specific order. I try to make them in an order that just kind of made sense. These are not worst to best or best or whatever. It just is what it is. First story was, I had a situation earlier this year where I was representing a seller client. Okay, so I had a listing representing a seller client, and we had actually, the home had been listed for a while, and then suddenly, after it had been listed for a while, we had multiple offers. Now this phenomenon does happen sometimes, right? Because what can happen is inventory can shift, and homes can go under contract, and all of a sudden a home that was maybe the second or third place home for a few different people suddenly becomes the first place home for those people, right? If you're the kind of person that's ever looked at homes, you know that you might have a list, right, of 5 different homes you're interested in, and it's here's my number 1, here's my number 2, here's my number 3, right? That's what I'm talking about. The home that was 2 or 3 for a few people all of a sudden gets bumped up to number 1 because of inventory shifting, things going under contract. And then suddenly you have a weird situation where there's multiple offers on a home that's been on the market already for several weeks or several months. So I had that sort of thing happen. And so we got a few different offers that came in on this house. And one of the offers had no due diligence. And so, in case you don't know what that means, basically, the agent was not giving their client any inspection period. Not giving them any inspection period. They put the end date for the due diligence period, which is what we call our inspection period, as the date of the offer. So I had a few, my responsibility as a listing agent, I have to present every offer that comes through. Even if it's a terrible offer, I have to present it. And there's a little bit of an art and a little bit of a science to presenting an offer. There's a lot of ways that you can do it. And so in this specific instance, I'm thinking about, okay, obviously this is a big part of this offer, right? It's very attractive and very rare in this market to have an offer as a seller where, hey, this buyer is not even giving themselves an inspection period. Now, I could have gone back to the agent and been like, hey, did you mean to do this? And for a split second, I thought about doing that. But that was just a split second of me being also a buyer agent and being sympathetic to, it's easy to make a clerical mistake like that. But a split second later, I went back into, I'm not the buyer agent, I'm the listing agent. I do what's in the best interest of my clients, and what's in the best interest of my clients is to tell them to accept this offer, right? And so, and to not ask any questions. It's the buyer agent's responsibility to write a correct offer. If I make a mistake like that, that's on me, right? We have E&O insurance, errors and omissions. If we make those sorts of mistakes, that's exactly why that insurance product exists. And so, long story short, I went to my clients, I presented the offer, and I told them, I got to the due diligence section, and I explained, okay, we need to have a little conversation here. The agent put the due diligence end date as the offer date. That's highly, highly irregular, especially since she didn't flag it to me ahead of time, right? That would normally be something like if I have had clients waive their inspection period before. That's something that I let the agent, the listing agent, know in advance. Like, hey, in order to make this a sweet offer, here's what my clients opted to do. Well, this agent didn't do that. And so this agent hadn't communicated anything, so I went back to my clients and explained it, and was just like, this agent did not communicate exactly, that they were going to put a 0-day due diligence period in here. So there is a possibility that this was a clerical error, that this was a mistake. But I didn't ask the agent that because I represent you guys, and I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to accept this before they realize their mistake. If it is a mistake. Again, I don't know. But regardless, it's an official offer that was made. Doesn't matter if there's a mistake on there that benefits my client. That's their problem, not ours. And so, long story short, my clients accepted it. But I did explain to them, I was like, hey, if this is a mistake, my recommendation would be to you, when the time comes, if it's a mistake, they're still going to have their inspections done, and they're going to realize it at some point, and they're probably still going to want some repairs to be done. And my recommendation would be that you don't play hardball. That if they make reasonable repair requests, that you move forward with doing repairs. And I've got contractors that can assist with that and all of that. Basically just preparing the way, right? A real estate transaction is there's a lot of highs and lows to it. It's a very emotional month. And if you're a buyer in that situation, and here's where, I represent parties on both sides, buyers and sellers, all the time. And so I know it from both perspectives. And I know if I had a buyer client where I messed up like that, and then they have, they do their inspections and repairs are needed to be done, and they don't like those, they don't want to move forward with the house if those repairs aren't done, but they can't even ask for the repairs to be done because their due diligence period is over. Like, that just can derail the entire transaction. That can cause the entire transaction to become majorly problematic. And so I just explained all of that, was just like, hey, this puts the ball in your court where you won't have to do any repairs in this transaction. However, I'm not going to recommend inherently that you do that. This just gives you some good negotiating ability, right? All right. So long story short, it did end up happening that they did make repair requests. I did have a conversation with the agent, with the buyer's agent, where they realized and admitted that they had made this mistake. And we worked through it. And I said, hey, I've already prepared my clients that if you guys make reasonable repair requests, that they will that they will move forward regardless, right? They are okay with doing repairs as long as they are reasonable. And so they sent over a repair list. We got a quote from a contractor, and they ended up moving forward and deciding to go ahead and do all the repairs that were on the list because they were reasonable for the most part. And so they did that. Well, the buyer had a reinspection done, which is completely within their right. And I saw, when they requested the reinspection, I saw that and everything. And so I was paying very close attention to, of course, again, as realtors, we have to pay super close attention to the contract every single time. There's a lot of different things in that contract that can derail a transaction, that can change a transaction dramatically. And so on the repair addendum, there are very specific dates, and it says that all the repairs have to be done by a certain date. And then if the seller has, or the buyer has, a period of time to check that those repairs have been done, and then they have to deliver notice if any of the repairs haven't been done correctly by a certain date. Well, that date came and went. The date by which the buyers had to deliver notice that repairs hadn't been completed correctly. Well, guess what happened? The very next day, I get an email from the agent saying, hey, they went out, they had it re-inspected, and then they went out there with a contractor. And the contractor saying there's $8,000 worth of work left to be done, or something like that, some astronomical number, which was insane. I'm not gonna get into details on like what that was about, but to me it sounded like a contractor trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, trying to just get a quick buck and scam people out of it. It was simply insane what they were asking. And so basically this agent said, my clients were going to ask for a $5,000 credit at closing. And mind you, this is just a few days before closing. They were going to ask for a $5,000 credit, but I got them to come down to a $2,500 credit. I didn't even go back to my clients with that, because guess what? They couldn't make that request because they had waited a day too late. And so what all I did was I emailed the agent back and just broke out, here's what contractually our obligations are. And then I said, this time we're going to follow the contract. Because if you remember, the first time I said, even though you don't have a due diligence period, my clients have agreed that they'll make reasonable repair requests. That's outside of their contractual obligations. No, this time we're going to follow the contract. I never got a response. We closed. Everything was good to go. That was the first time for me, right? Not only to make the mistake, and to this agent's credit, I don't think the agent wanted to ask for that $2,500 credit. It did not. It seemed very much like that was a situation where they felt bad about making that request, but they were doing it on behalf of their client. So I've got no ill will toward the agent or towards anyone in that transaction. I don't keep ill will. That's not a good way to do business. But after the buyers were willing to do after the sellers were willing to do things that they contractually didn't have to do, to then try to get more money out of them right in the 11th hour, really underhanded. And I did not appreciate that at the time at all. But again, all's well that ends well. This one ended well. Everyone walked away happy. My second story involves a situation where it's actually a house that I was flipping. And I purchased a property out in Moore, South Carolina, Spartanburg County. And the sellers needed to lease the property back. And so we came up with an agreement basically whereby they would be able to remain in the property for 30 days post-closing without paying anything. And then after that, there was money that we held back from their proceeds at closing. And basically, after that 30th day, they would lose $100 a day from their proceeds. And so that's a pretty good incentive to get out of the house, right? $100 a day is a lot more than it costs to rent a house in Moore, South Carolina. $3,000 a month, you can rent a mansion in Moore, South Carolina for $3,000 a month. And this was no mansion. Well, these people, of course, we get to the 30th day and every excuse imaginable, all sorts of things. And I don't even know what to believe or what not to believe. I'm not going to get into details on any of that. But they dragged it out as long as possible. They had this huge dumpster. This huge pod. And they were like running electricity to it. The HOA president has my personal number. The HOA president is like freaking out. She's like, they're running electricity to this pod. We think there might be people living in this pod, which there weren't. I'm sorry that wasn't happening. I had multiple people verify that wasn't happening. And there was a water heater just out in the front yard, not connected to anything. She was freaked out. She was like, that water heater, what if it explodes? It's just like, how's it going to explode when it's not connected to anything? And she was like losing her mind. I got so much correspondence from that HOA over the situation. And then I finally got them out after really, really painful situation. Finally got people out of this house. Got them. I didn't even take the full $100 a day. I tried to be generous to them, understanding, they were going through a tough time on multiple levels. So some health issues, whatnot. That was, by the way, the third worst smelling house I've ever been in. Yes, I have done this long enough that I have a catalog in my brain of worst smelling homes. I don't know how it was possible to live in there. I don't know how they were living there. Really sad. Unfortunately, in real estate, we see some of these situations. But finally got them out. Now, I'm having to deal with the rehab. So we get a dumpster in the front yard or in the driveway and we got to trash this place out. I mean, tons of trash, as you can imagine, inside the house. Ripping out carpet, ripping out, a lot of things to rehab this home. I get contacted from the HOA saying we're not allowed to have pods in the driveway for more than 3 days. And it's like, I'm sorry, a dumpster is not a pod. Okay, a pod is something you move things in. A dumpster is something you throw away things. And find me anyone that has ever flipped a house that has had a dumpster in the driveway and has gotten all the demo done and everything that they needed done in 3 days. Like, that is the most outrageous. So I just told him no. I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that. You're crazy. And that HOA was they were very polite, but they had higher feelings about their neighborhood than I did, quite frankly. I guess that's normal for an HOA community. But I'm not done with this story. Regardless of the HOA, I did finally sell this house. And a few days before closing, I had another surprise, which if you know me, I hate surprises. I don't even like good surprises. No surprises. I like everything to be predictable, transparent. Yeah, let's just get from point A to point B, and that's it. No little, sidetracks in there. I got contacted by the buyer's agent a few days before closing, and they had looked up in the attic, which I had not done that. Like, I outsource everything. when I'm flipping a house. I don't go in there. I don't swing hammers and nails and screws. I don't do any of that myself. Too much liability for one thing, with me being a realtor and homeowner. But I'm also just too busy for that, right? I'm a realtor by trade. I'm not a house flipper. And so I got contacted by the buyer's agent, and he sent me a video of the attic, and the attic had a ton of stuff in it. And it was just like, I assumed that the demo crew had gone up there and had taken care of it, and I had assumed incorrectly. I hadn't been up there myself. And it was just one of those gut-wrenching things where it's just like, okay, I can pay someone probably a few $1,000s to do this, or I can clear out an afternoon and do it myself. And so I chose to clear out the afternoon to do it myself because, quite frankly, this has not been my best year of real estate from a financial perspective. The market's been weird. And if I can save a couple $1,000s, a penny saved is a penny earned, right? I'm going to save myself that money. And I've done this sort of thing before. Like, this is obviously just manual labor, very simple to do. I don't mind manual labor. Again, there's no liability for me removing trash. So it makes sense. So I actually asked my wife to help me out because I could see this is going to be difficult for one person to do. So we both went over. We spent the afternoon over at this place, and I have got a full-size pickup truck. I filled my pickup truck, bed and back bench, twice with stuff from this house. I didn't even think to bring my trailer. Should have brought my trailer. I didn't think that there was any way that I was going to that there was going to be that much stuff in the attic, even though I saw it. When you see it up there, and then once you start consolidating and start loading it up, then you realize it's a lot more than you originally thought. Who's calling me? Spam call. Have to turn the volume off on my computer for a second because even though I've got this on mute, it's still ringing in my ear here. So anyway, this is what you deal with when you're flipping houses, and that just goes to the territory. HOAs, HOA issues, tenant issues, attics being full of stuff. It's always something. That was my craziest story number 2. My craziest story number 3, this one's going to be short, but this one might be the craziest out of all of them, if we're going to be completely honest. And this is related to the same house, okay? The same house I just talked about. I got a letter in the mail from the sewer district that said that they had shut off the sewer to the home, and that there was a risk if we ran any water, flushed any toilets, that it might back up back into the home. This is after I had done the entire rehab. And I was like, holy cow, like this is... First off, how do you shut off sewer to a house? Like, I didn't even know that was possible. Like, do they plug the main line? Like, I don't know enough about the public sewer system to know, like, what capabilities they have with that. But that was like a whole new thing for me. And obviously the reason was that they hadn't paid their bill for their sewer. But I immediately, within seconds of opening that, I'm calling the sewer district and being like, hey, what in the world are you guys doing here? First off, I'm a different owner. I'm not the people that didn't pay you. But how do you even turn off sewer to a house? And so anyway, they looked up their records and they're just like, okay, yes, you're right. Those were the previous owners. Disregard this. We're going to remove all restrictions from your house. But that taught me something. I'm like, you can have your sewer turned off. And I don't want to ever have that happen. Please don't ever turn off. I'm in Greenville County. Greenville, please don't ever turn off my sewer. I don't want that stuff coming back into my house. That would be really bad. My next story, I had a big refinance that I did this year on some of my rental properties. And I realized in the middle of it that the way they had been subdivided prior to my ownership, the way the lot had been subdivided, made it to where lenders didn't want to touch it. It was subdivided in a weird way. Like one of the buildings was straddling two different parcels. And it was something that I always was aware of and, thought it was weird, but also didn't think it really mattered, right? Because, I own both parcels. It kind of doesn't matter how they're split up. I didn't really consider a lender is going to have problems with this, right? And there's a variety of reasons why I didn't consider that. Originally, I thought I was going to be getting a commercial loan, and then I realized that was not going to be the best approach for me for this property. Commercial loan, I would have been able to do it, but the terms were a non-negotiable for me. I couldn't go about it that way. So then I had to go through the whole process of having these lots subdivided. Well, they're in Greenville City, so that means you have to involve both the city and the county. They both have, so the city is the one that does the subdividing, but then the county, they still have to create the tax map numbers and figure out the taxes and all of that. So I start the process. I've never done this before. I had never done any sort of subdividing before. So I was just it was a big learning experience for me. I'd completely start from ground zero to try to get that over the finish line. So I started, I knew at the very least I needed to start with a survey. So I start with having my surveyor go out there and he does his thing and makes basically, well, I guess before I had done that, I had called the city and had been like, what do you guys need me to do here? And they explained what they wanted was, I have 3 buildings basically that are on these 2 parcels. They wanted me to do the 3 buildings, each on their own parcel, and then for there to be a master parcel around them that would be a common area. So then I contact my surveyor, and my surveyor goes out there. He did an incredible job. Was out there quick, got me everything I needed, and so then, excuse me, then I have to send it over to the city, their engineering and all sorts of different departments. They all have to sign off on it. It was supposed to take 30 days. They said it would take a max of 30 days. What I didn't realize was that they don't keep track of it. And so after 30 days went by and I hadn't heard anything, I was actually busy. So I let it go past a few days past 30 days. And then I still hadn't heard anything. I emailed my main point of contact, wasn't hearing back from him, was calling him. He wasn't responding. Again, this was with Greenville City. And so I was just like, I need to get this addressed. So I went to the Greenville City planning page and just started calling every single person on staff and leaving voice. Obviously, none of them answered. I left voicemails with every single one until I finally got a call back. Like in the middle of leaving voicemails, I finally get a call back from the guy that was my point of contact, and he profusely apologized. And actually everything was done, and he just hadn't told me, which was so annoying. So I went over. I got what I needed from the city. Then I had to go over to the county, get everything done with the county. And here's what I didn't realize. So the tax bills had already come out for the year. So the county basically wrote everything on my survey, like all the tax map numbers, the addresses, everything, in, I think, red ink, right, to make it very, very distinct. That ended up being my only proof, functionally, that I had this done, because the tax bills had already come out. So the actual re-subdividing, even though it's recorded, it's not going to reflect in the public records until 2026. Well, guess what my lender didn't like? They didn't like any of that. And so I literally, in order to get this resolved, in order to try to make this compliant with the lender, I couldn't get anywhere with anyone. I called up my county councilman over that. Now, not my county councilman here in where I live, but the one that is in that district. And I'll just say who it is, Councilman Alan Mitchell. And I'm gonna just say right away that Alan Mitchell is one of the best county council people, in my opinion, from the standpoint of serving his constituents. You might have disagreements on some of his views, or whatever, but in terms of someone that serves and actually treats the job like a public servant, I have very, very high regard for Councilman Mitchell. He shows up at events. He wants to learn. He wants to be good at being a councilman. And so I was very happy when I looked up who it was that served that area, and it was him. I was very happy. I knew right away the Councilman Mitchell is going to be able to help me out here. And so I got him on the phone, and sure enough, I mean, he went right to work to try to get clarification for me, for the lender, on like what could we do in order to satisfy the lender's requirements. What can the county do in order to make the lender feel at home that that I had correctly subdivided these properties, that there's nothing weird going on, right? And so I had talked to him like late at night. The next morning he called me, and he was at the county offices, and had people from planning right there, and we were all on the phone, and I was like, hey, can I get the lender on the phone? So I three-way in the lender, and we have a conversation just between all of us, right? And Councilman Mitchell, what a super helpful individual, and Greenville County was as helpful as they could be as well. Unfortunately, through all of that, I still had to change lenders. The lender simply, their underwriters simply could not get over the fact that the way these had to be subdivided. And at the end, what they said, this is the most outrageous thing I've ever heard. They, as I had already said, I had 3 buildings, each on their own parcel, and then a master parcel as a common area around them. They said that they would only accept an appraisal that also had the exact same thing. It would have to be 3 buildings, specifically duplexes, each on their own parcel with a master parcel common area around them. And it's just like, we don't even sell, like in a good year of selling duplexes in Greenville County, we might sell 100 of them. We're talking about Greenville City. And not just Greenville City, this is downtown Greenville. There's almost no duplexes that sell in downtown Greenville, let alone this sort of setup. And so yeah, unfortunately, I had to change lenders, and it was very annoying, very frustrating. But we got through it. But there's a second part of all of this, and this is my 5th craziest story of 2025. When I was working with that first lender, we went ahead and had appraisals done on my 3 duplexes. They came in with a valuation of it was like $1.22 million. Okay, now remember, these are fully renovated duplexes in downtown Greenville, just outside of Historic District. Great area, really great area, walkable to everything. Yeah. So they came up with, that appraiser came up with values that basically each of them was worth about $400,000 and change. And I know, and these are also 3-bedroom duplexes, by the way. Most duplexes in the Upstate are 2 bedrooms, especially the older ones. Some of these newer ones that they're putting up are 3-bedroom, but the newer ones are not comparable, right? And I'm not going to get into all the details about that. Long story short, I looked at the appraisal because that was way below what I thought it was going to come in at. I looked at the appraisal, and the appraiser had pulled 6 comps. Now, they put the comps in order of the ones that are influencing their valuations the most. There was one property on there that was actually close to mine, and it was the last one. So it was the one that he gave the least weight to. The other properties that he pulled from were from, if you're from Greenville, you know what these areas are: Judson, Overbrook, Sans Souci, and areas around there. That's where he was pulling from in order to compare to a property in downtown Greenville, and he made no adjustments for location. So he did not. So just so that you guys understand this, the way an appraisal is done, they will pull all the comps and then they'll make adjustments. So this comp is in better condition than your property, so I am going to adjust the comp down to account for the fact that it's in better condition. I need to pull the value of it down because that will make it truly comparable, right? Or in the reverse, if the comp is not as good of condition as the subject property that is being appraised, then they will add value to the comp in order to balance it out. And then they basically determine at the end, after they've done all of those adjustments, that informs to them what the actual subject property is worth. I'm talking in generalities here, but generally speaking, layman's way of explaining it, that's what happens. Well, the same thing is supposed to happen for a location. If you have a property that's in a prime location, and this is a prime location. I mean, my duplexes sit on nearly 2/3 of an acre, and there was a third of an acre just down the street that sold for undeveloped. A third of an acre that sold just down the street for, I think it was like around 600,000, something like that. I'd need to go back and look. But just a piece of land that was smaller sold for that. So, I mean, this is prime real estate for Greenville. And he made no adjustments comparing it to Sans Souci, Judson, Overbrook, that are just not comparable areas. And again, if you're from Greenville, you understand that. And the fact that the appraiser didn't understand that, shocking. I ran this information by an appraiser friend of mine, and this friend of mine had never heard of this appraiser before. So maybe it's a new person, and they were just out of their depth. Really unfortunate, but this happens. As I already told you, I had to switch lenders, and we had to have new appraisals done, which I was happy about. But also, I mean, every single appraisal is expensive. I had to have 3 different appraisals done, so it cost me several $1,000s extra to do this. But the second appraisals came in at $1.6 million, and it was like, that was actually more than I expected. And so 2 different appraisals done a few weeks from each other had roughly a $400,000 spread between the 2 of them, and that just blew my mind. Yeah, I learned a lot from that. And in the future, I will be taking more proactive steps with those sorts of appraisals. That's what I did for the second set of appraisals. I met the appraiser out there. I couldn't meet the first appraiser, just didn't work with my schedule. But I met the second appraiser out there and had loads of information for them. I did hours and hours of research to prepare them and to basically, just give them some helpful information. And I made sure to explain that, like, hey, not all of this is going to be helpful, but I think some of it will be, and just throw out what's not helpful and keep what is helpful, right? I don't want them to think that I'm trying to do their job for them or insult them in any way. But they were very responsive. Obviously, gave me a great appraisal second time, so I'm happy about that. My 6th craziest story, and then I've got one more after that. My 6th craziest story is I had a situation where I had a client that really wanted a house, but it was like just outside their budget, just outside their price range. And so, but well, I should say this. It wasn't really outside their price range. It was more that it just needed so much work, and the loan that they needed to get just wasn't really compatible with that sort of house. And so we were just trying to figure out how we could make it work, because the listing agent didn't want to, they were really holding out for a cash offer. They didn't really want to do a finance offer because the home needed some work done on it. And so, long story short, my clients were just like, let's just make an offer, right? and make them respond to it. And yeah, that could be a strategy that there's really not a whole lot of downside to it, right? They have to, as I've already said, the listing agent has to present an offer, even if it's an offer that goes against what the seller is saying that they're looking to receive. And so made an offer, and the seller basically countered verbally, and we reached a verbal agreement. I wrote up a counteroffer, sent it over to them. Didn't hear anything. Hear back from the agent. They're concerned about this or that. They're going to make another counter. Okay, another verbal counter. I go back to my clients and it's just like, okay, they're changing the terms again here. What do you think about this? They're just like, you know what? We're desperate. They have all the cards. We'll agree to it. I write up a second counter or a third offer, depending on how you're looking at it. I'll say that. I wrote up the third offer. Sent it over. No response. Third time, the listing agent gets back with me and, they're doing a bunch of work to the house now. And they're just trying to, they basically decided that they want to do a bunch of work to the house and get better offers. And so that's what they have ended up doing. And now we have an offer on the table, and we're accepting highest and best offers by this deadline, which was several days out. It was just like, really? So now, and I believe there was another like verbal agreement in there somewhere. I think that there was like a third time that we reached a verbal agreement, and then they reneged on it. And then of course started doing work to the house. We're still trying to get it under contract, and in the process of that, they've received another offer. And so now they're looking for a bidding war, right? And so they say, after the weekend, I believe it was a Tuesday. It was like, we're accepting highest and best offers until Tuesday. So my clients thought about it over the weekend, and Monday comes around. They're just like, we still want to make an offer and just make one final play. We'll make our highest and best offer. And if it's not accepted, then we'll move on from it. And I contacted the agent, and the house had already gone under contract. They had not even waited until the deadline that they had set for receiving multiple offers. So my clients didn't even get a chance to purchase that house after the multiple offers. But it wasn't meant to be. They ended up getting a much better house. I mean, so much better on so many different levels. And I've said this before, and you guys know I'm a Christian, I'm a religious person, but regardless of that, and I feel like this is true for my clients, regardless of what their religion or non-religion is, I feel like people end up in the house that they're supposed to end up in. I truly do. And I think that all these things do work together for good in the end. And so they ended up getting a great house, and I'm really happy for them. And honestly, I think they would have had some really big problems if they had gotten this other house under contract, quite frankly. And so what's meant to be does it. What's meant to be always happens. That's my perspective, and I'm gonna stick to that. All right, final story. This one for me is the craziest. I had to navigate a situation I've never had before. So I was on my way to Spartanburg County for something later in the day, and I receive a call from a client, and they say, "Hey Stan, we're at a house with another agent, and this agent says that they have knowledge that the seller will do seller financing. And so we didn't think that we could buy this house with our current financing, but with seller financing, we probably could. And so we don't really know how to navigate this, but we need to get inside and look at the house. maybe you can just release us of your buyer agency agreement. And I was super confused, right? Super confused on multiple levels. But long story short, I ended up getting on the phone with the agent because functionally this is trying to steal my client, right? This is, and that is very illegal. You can lose your real estate license for doing that sort of thing. Like, we have classes that talk about this in excruciating detail. If we ever get a call from someone, just a random person off the street, we have to ask them like 3 or 4 different ways. Are you working with a realtor? So that's one way of asking it. Then, well, have you signed anything with any realtors up to this point? Have you signed a brokerage disclosure? Have you signed any sort of buyer agency agreement? Have you had a realtor write a contract for you or an offer up to this point, right? Because here's what happens. Sometimes the public will try to tell you what they think you want to hear, and sometimes they don't even know what they've signed, or if they've signed something, or sometimes they're just like, yeah, I'm just going to tell a little white lie here, just because I want to get this property. But those contracts, when you sign a buyer agency agreement with a realtor, that is a contract, and you are committing to compensate them for any home that you purchase during the period of that agreement. And so you can't just ignore that. And so we have all these questions that we have to ask. And I've been in some classes where they say, if they say that oh yes, I did see some homes with this realtor, but I didn't sign anything with them, we need to call that realtor right away and say, hey, is this your client? These people reached out to me. Have they signed a buyer agency agreement with you? And so we have to go through an incredible painstaking detail in order to ensure, if we get that random phone call from someone, that they are not already working with someone. And the responsibility isn't on the customer to do that. The responsibility is on the realtor to vet things out properly, to make sure that they aren't putting themselves in a position where they're stealing someone else's client illegally. So I talked to this agent on the phone. This agent told me that they had asked my clients if they were working with a realtor, and my clients seemed confused and indicated that they weren't. I have questions about that, but whatever. I don't know. In the end, these people were neighbors. So my clients, the realtor, they were neighbors. So I guess they were kind of friends. There was some confusion. But this realtor had coached them for what to do and what to say. And here's the part that doesn't add up, right? If they had indicated that they weren't working with me, why was it that when they arrived at the property, that was when they called and suddenly knew that they had to be released from a buyer agency agreement, right? Something doesn't add up. I wasn't being told the whole truth here. And I don't know exactly what this agent thought that they were doing. I don't know if they were just really, really poorly trained. That I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to reverse engineer. I don't want to assume malice in a situation where you can make other assumptions, where maybe it was just lack of understanding. Very well that my clients could have done that thing that I just described, where they are just so desperate that they just start saying things that aren't entirely true, or their mind's not spinning. It might not have been 100% the agent's responsibility, but I already said, in terms of how this is approached from a real estate standpoint, it is always 100% the agent's responsibility. Customer, the worst that the customer or the client can get in trouble in this situation is if they owe another party a commission, right? So if they closed on a property and used a different agent that wasn't representing them, and that agent gets paid, but I am under contract to get paid, they would then have to pay me too. That's the worst thing that can happen. But in terms of like this sort of situation where we're trying to figure it out, no, that it's the responsibility, always the responsibility of the realtor. That's the way the code of ethics works. That's the way real estate works in general. You cannot ever come close to stealing someone else's client. You can't have a conversation with someone about real estate without even explaining to them that they are unrepresented. And if they are represented, that conversation just needs to stop. I've had that situation happen before. I've had people call me. I had someone, this was in my craziest stories of 2024. I had someone call me that they had a home that was listed with their agent, and they weren't happy with their agent, that their agent wasn't willing to do open houses. And so they contacted me asking me if I would list their home for them and do open houses. And I said, we can't have this conversation. You are working with another realtor. You need to talk to your realtor about that, not me. End of conversation. That was it. They called me back again. And I told them, I'm sorry. Stop calling me. Like, until you are working with another realtor, call your realtor. I can't have this conversation with you. And when that happened, the next thing I did was I called their realtor and told her what was happening. That is how you have to do it. I had another situation like that happened to me late last year as well, where someone misinformed me that they were unrepresented, and I had asked all the questions, and they just flat out lied to me. And then later on, I hear from their agent, and I had to be extremely apologetic and explain my side of it. That, man, I'm really sorry. Here's the questions I asked. Here's what they responded. There must have been some kind of a miscommunication between us, because I certainly was not trying to steal anyone's client. I got no apologies in this situation. No apologies. In fact, the broker of this agent called me, didn't ask a whole lot of questions, was mostly just on offense, trying to put me in my place. And so be careful out there. I've said a few times there's a lot of shenanigans going on in this market. There's a lot of shenanigans going on. There was an appraiser that there was an agent in my office that had a pre-listing appraisal done recently for a listing. And if you know much about, if you're not a realtor, I've got to explain this to you. We can't really have a listing agreement signed until you're actually ready to list the house. Like, I can't have you sign a listing agreement but you're not going to list the house for another 3 months. That's against MLS rules. And that's to protect the public, so that we don't have these agents, committing people to these listing agreements, and then they're not marketing the property, and then it's like, well, what's going on? But we had and this is a freebie, right? This isn't one of my stories, but this is still a crazy story. This appraiser, apparently, his wife is a realtor, and after he did the pre-listing appraisal, which, remember, paperwork had not been signed, so that was nobody's client yet, because they could not sign the paperwork. But we have a little bit of an honor system, a little bit of a trust system, right? When someone reaches out to me, they want me to list their home, I have to front some money. Getting professional photography, getting measurements, all of these sorts of things. I have to front some money in order to in order to get the ball rolling, without them having any true commitment in writing that they're going to list the home with me. That's just the way it works. Well, this appraiser must have communicated to his realtor wife about this whole situation, that he was doing this pre-listing appraisal at a really nice house. Guess who calls the seller right after the appraisal is done? The realtor who was married to the appraiser tried to steal the listing. Now, technically, it's not a stolen listing, right? But that is really, really weird. I've never heard of something like that happening. So and I might have gotten some of those details wrong. That was an agent in my office, but that was loosely speaking what happened. So there's a lot of shenanigans out there, a lot of crazy things happening out there, and that's going to be a wrap for my craziest stories of 2025. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't steal any clients. Don't do that. Bad idea. Ask the right questions. Don't wait until you're at the house to decide that, oh, now is the time. Right before I show them this house, now I'm going to call them and try to put a fire under them to ask them to let me steal their client. Don't do that. Bad idea. But thank you guys so much for listening. we're going to have another crazy 2026. 2025 was crazy. 2026 probably going to be crazier. I'm looking forward to it. We got a few more episodes to wrap up the year that I'm excited about, so I hope you guys stay tuned for all of it. Thank you so much for listening. My contact info is in the show notes. Like, rate, review, subscribe to the show, and we will talk to you guys next time.